and the commission, and thanks again for the opportunity to work with y'all and conduct this important process. As I mentioned briefly this morning, this is the first formal written review for Sean as the city manager of the city of Lakeland. As such, there's no year-over-year comparisons. The overall performance review is positive. 5 of the 7 performance dimensions, again, scored 4.09 or above, suggesting or indicating met or somewhat exceeded expectations. Of the 49 individual scores, as mentioned earlier, 32%, 33% or so were 4.5 or 5, indicating exceeds expectations. So about a third of the individual scores. Of the remaining scores, 20 were 4.0 or greater, indicating meets expectations. And there were 7 scores in Sean's case between 3.0 and 3.5, suggesting average performance to above average performance. On the individual reviewer standpoint, 3 of the commissioners gave Sean an overall rating greater than 4.46, suggesting again that for 3 of the commissioners, performance meets or exceeds expectation overall. There were 2 reviewers below 4.0, one at 3.94, one at 3.79, suggesting somewhat meets expectations to kind of above average. The overall, if you give it 1 score overall, it's a 4.15, which meets or somewhat exceeds expectations. There were 77 comments offered. Of those 77, 58% or 45 were positive, affirmative, things that I like. There were 26 comments, about a third of the total comments, suggesting improvement, more of something that Sean is already doing. And there were 6 suggestions for doing things differently, again, somewhat scattered across the 7 dimensions evenly. Again, performance meets or somewhat exceeds expectations. And having said that, I open it up to the mayor and the commissioners for any comments and Sean's response. Commissioner Walker? Mic on.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for this opportunity. Let me share my reasoning for scoring as I did, and specifically so, as we had the, I should call the 6-month review with Mr. Strauss, and hearing some of the comments that were made from by my fellow colleagues, and looking at some opportunities that would avail themselves for improvement, has caused me to land where I did with my scoring. Pleased to know, first of all, as we did, we were able to bring someone up into a position of city manager from within, for succession planning kind of thing, that we want to make sure all departments are doing as best they can. Having someone to go through the process as we did, we went and had of course, selection process, which became national selection, as we did. I really thought, from hearing again from what was colleagues and opportunities for a city manager to improve himself, saw the movement afoot to make the improvements as he did. Certainly appreciate what has taken place. Of course, as always, steps forward to make sure you do better, for all of us especially so, but for him as an employee of ours, I want to make sure he would improve and continue to move in that vein to support his position to better himself and to, of course, as I oftentimes hear my colleagues say, what we want Lakeland to become, and comparing ourselves to other cities our size, outside of our course, the state of Florida and surrounding areas. But certainly appreciate how the movement have come about, communication being, as I say it, opened enough where I can call and use what I call and make that call. I get a response back, at least within the 24 hours or less time period. I think we have a growing community, as we all know and have shared, that we are growing, and we have a cities management team. I hope to know that will continue to know and how to keep their fingers on the pulse, as I oftentimes say, with other components of our city, to keep those things going. I'm glad to see the three-leg stool is complete. It was not that way at starting out, and even with one of our city managers part of the stool out because of a medical situation, having to deal with some things, and then doing this critical component of the pandemic. That's why, again, I landed as I did with my comments and as my scoring has been. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm gonna go off camera again because I'm trying to. Excuse me, I'll go off camera again because I'm listening, but I wanted to make sure that you saw my face as I talk and trying to eat too.
All right, you finish on up, that's fine. I'd like us to focus a little bit on what I'd like to see done differently comments, if we could, because I think that's where we can provide the best suggested constructive help along the way. And so one of those is a couple times says that he should engage more emerge more publicly himself or alongside the commission, and maybe not necessarily on one-on-one meetings. And the other was to make sure he's raising up more of his lieutenants to be able to have visibility as we go along. Would anybody like to weigh in on that or other topics to do differently? Okay. That didn't seem to bait anything. Don't forget it's Dennis's birthday today. That's you, Larry. All right.
Hey, Mayor Metz.
Yes, certainly. Go ahead.
I just sort of say, Sean and I had a very great conversation now. I don't know how many weeks ago that was, Sean, but and I wanted to clarify some of my scoring on Sean's performance as well, because I think that we're both growing in each of our roles. So I want Sean to be as successful as possible. And I also want to disclose, like talking to Dr. Ross, for me, giving fives is, it's just, I don't know if it's just something with the way I grew up or what it is, but you know, they'll never be perfect. I think we always need to grow. I would grade myself very, very difficultly, you know, in this process. I would give myself like 3s and 2s, just because I think we always need to grow and achieve. And I also think in conversation. And Dr. Ross, I don't know if you want to take a second to sort of explain the original intent of this, but that.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. When this was put together 20 some years ago, and we were trying to put each piece of it in place to assure confidence in the process, it was the intent of the commission then that average performance, a 3.0 on this scale, was not their expectation. That average was, in fact, below expectation for the city manager, or in this case, the city attorney as well, for the city of Lakeland. And so it was determined that a 4.0 would be, and we used the term intentionally, meets expectations, that the expectations of the commission for the person or persons they recruited and hired would be above average, essentially. So the 5-point scale, and over the years, we've had commissioners, echoing your comments, Commissioner McCarley, that their scale, their experience suggests a slightly different, and that's fine. There's no validity issues with that. It's each individual, your evaluation against your expectations. So if you have very high expectations, it's entirely possible that the person being reviewed might only have a 3 or 3.5 or what have you along the way. I will say also that in Commissioner McCarley's case, since you don't get to see the working papers, she's one of the few commissioners that takes every line of the performance review and evaluates it individually, and then we average those numbers to get her categorical or her dimension score. So you might see a number like, I think it's 2.83. She wasn't being that discriminate in choosing out to hundreds. It was simply the mean score of her 4 scores or 5 scores in that category. So that helps.
Ms. McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm just a little off, sorry.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Ross. That was helpful clarification. The 2.83, I was wondering how that, just the 8.3, the specificity of that number. But yeah, I think, Mayor, I don't know if my comments were along the lines of what you mentioned, but I think for me, I have seen growth, Sean, with you as in terms of communication since the 6-month mark. I think there's opportunity to continue that growth. Specifically just keeping us up to date and informed of what's happening. And I was one of the ones who put not necessarily more emails, but just a very, it's part of your rhythm as a leader, as somebody who that becomes part of what you do, that you communicate well, that you check in with us and say, hey, what's going on? Anything on your list, on your radar? I think you're great about when things are coming up and we've got big items you need to get in front of us, but just expanding that more. And I know that takes a lot of time with 7 of us, and we all have different quirks and personalities, but I think you can grow in that and become a stronger leader if you become a stronger communicator as part of that leadership. And so I know you're always willing to meet, and on my end, I've tried to increase the number of one-on-ones that I do because I feel like that's really helped to do that face-to-face. So I just encourage you to keep growing as a communicator. The management of the department, the supervision and leadership and management style, I share with Dr. Ross that it's hard for me to evaluate that at this point to move you above a 4.0. And it's because I think parts of that, there's just a big question mark of not knowing. If somebody came up to me and said, how is the culture at City Hall? What kind of culture does Sean cultivate? And is he building with our employees? It's not that I would have anything negative to say. I don't know. And so I'm looking for more opportunities to get a better handle on that for the next year, to see how you are as a leader within our organization. How do you communicate with the employees? I know bits and pieces, how are the department heads and the directors, how do they feel about your leadership style? That's information that I just don't have today. What I have seen has been strong, and I agree with Commissioner Walker. I mean, I'm pleased with what I've seen from our deputy and assistant city managers. I thought it was great when you had Nicole sit in and run that meeting, even though you were in your office preparing to leave, but you gave her that opportunity to step up and be in the spotlight a little bit more, and certainly would encourage that because we have 2 very talented people, as you know, in those positions. I had also put the comment about creativity in the management of the city, and so I loved when you came back from Carmel and had ideas and things that you, is it Carmel? Are you correcting my Carmel? Okay. have that we've never had, and it would be different and maybe a little creative for government, but pushing on those boundaries a little bit to constantly bring new thought, new ideas, and new creativity into the city. Those were my main just constructive comments in areas that I know you'll continue to grow in. I do think what I've seen over the past few months, I feel like you're starting to find a stronger stride as city manager and making that transition from deputy into the top spot. And I know that's challenging to do that at times, but I think you've seen a lot of progress.
That's good to hear as well, because that's consistent with Commissioner McCarley. I saw the Commissioner Music.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, and I think that what Commissioner McLeod just echoed will kind of makes me understand a little bit better, because I probably rated City Manager Strauss higher maybe on some, because in my short tenure, I've seen him come from deputy into this. So I'm seeing the upswing potentially of some of the questions that he has had from you all as far as maybe, communication. And there was probably more. And as I spoke with Dr. Ross about, really, I had a lot of uncertainty because I didn't feel that I had a whole lot of experience to offer a lot of real value here. So as far as like the policy and planning where I had the, the not applicable. So it's good to hear that over your tenure as having, known him as the deputy and then as the city manager, that he has improved in some of the areas of communication maybe that you had concern, because that hasn't been my experience. My experience has been very positive in the communication. We talked about the fact that when he was up in Carmel, I was there right around the same time, and we were texting pictures back and forth. And it really is, that to me is, it's just, to me, as looking at somebody who has all of these employees, that he is, responsible for, the fact that I feel that he's still communicating very well with me personally was what's important. So, and then it was the same for Palmer. It's just, I don't have a ton of experience in the relationship right now, but what I have personally has been very positive. So I'm hoping that that my next 4-year term, I'll be able to better opinion of that.
I get it to work. Kevin. Okay, can you hear me? It shows green. Great. I'd like someone to comment on maybe this covers it, the email responses that you send something, you don't get something back. Are you at least just wanting to be acknowledged that it was received, so that if he sends something you'd like, here, got it, let me work on that, I'll get back to you by, once I have a chance? Anybody want to weigh in on that?
That was probably me. And Sean and I have talked about that since, but just an affirmation that something got sent, because I think staff is really, really good at telling us the end result. But I think, if we just know that it's attained and somebody has it in their hand and that they're working on it, that would be awesome.
Great. Now I'm the one that drug this. Yes, Commissioner Madden, go ahead first.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like I need to speak slowly because I hear the echoing from the other offices. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I will say that I was one of the ones who had sent a few citizen concerns, and in several kind of in a couple of day period, and then it was about a month, I think, that I had not heard anything. So I was under I thought, well, maybe the ball was dropped, or maybe they're out of town, or and that was not the case. Actually, city staff was busy at work behind the scenes. People had been addressing those citizen concerns. I just wasn't aware, and so Sean did, when he found that out, say, I dropped the ball. I reached out to Brian. Brian had been communicating with the appropriate people. And so, what I've noticed is, and I'll just give all my comments now since I'm responding on the communication point and then the other points, is that I I feel like Commissioner McCarley and I were reticent going through the city management hiring processes to know whether or not whether or not Sean was skilled in everything he had done prior, but to go to the next level with the projected growth, to kind of go from like that Greenville or Chattanooga kind of growth and innovation and everything, that was kind of the missing ingredient. That's just the unknown. I will say that since January 1, when he has entered in this, he has been running fast and engaging staff very quickly and nimbly behind the scenes to accomplish all of the things that he set out to do in a timely fashion. But I think in so doing, and then add COVID, he was waiting to finish it and then give that report of completion when we just didn't know, we just didn't know what we didn't know. And so I feel like when I had a discussion recently with him, he said, I've had that discussion with department heads and with the city management team. Certainly we had illness and all of those things. So now we finally have the three, in those seats of the city management team where they were going to address and how they could appropriately communicate. Because I do know that some of us who were used to Tony, he would just be like, got it, on it, or he would forward it and he would CC us on the forward, so we'd know it had been forwarded to like electric or had been forwarded to, whatever department, so we could see that movement and we knew that people were addressing it and they were on it, and we could just wait until we had some resolution or until we were notified that we needed to ask more questions or do things. So we kind of were able to see like that email chain, so to speak, and it was very helpful. I didn't have to, then make as many questions in a city commission meeting or an agenda study, because I could say, oh, this was passed to purchasing passed it to the actual person who, was part of that procurement on that. I had a little trail, almost as if I'd asked for a public record to see what had been happening. And so I think that takes the load off Sean from having to write up a report or to communicate all those details, to just pass it to the appropriate staff. And then I know, okay, this is being handled. Or if someone says, oh yeah, that's the staff I spoke to, I go, oh yeah, I know the city manager is speaking, to that staff person, or they've been looped in on this. So I don't know, and that's maybe a comfort level or a leadership style. I'm not saying that, Sean needs to be like Tony, but I am saying that gave us kind of a way to know what had been happening that maybe we've not had, since January. Now, because Sean's very attention to detail, I feel like that, kind of his military experience and following and getting things done, I've seen firsthand the broadband deal, the LRH deal, the union negotiation. I mean, we've had the tying up of loose ends like I've never seen, and the speed in which I've never seen in 4 years in the commission. So I see his work ethic and I see his excellence, and I see that he is making things happen. So now I'm pivoting to communication, which I think we've covered. We just need to know a little bit more. You're on it. Let us know you're dealing with it. In the meantime, so we know, and give us kind of some clues, or even give us staff to give us clues so what we can say back to the citizen, because that's the worst part, is just not being able to know what to say to citizens. So then I'm pivoting here quickly to my other points, in which I can boil it predominantly into, I feel like great teams blossom under great leadership, right? I'm just a believer in it. A small business owner, shame on me if my staff is not full of rock stars. It's, I'm going to blame my poor leadership, unless over time I've tried to coach and I've just got an energy vampire and they're taking more out of the team than they contribute, and then they just can't be a part of the team after all we've done to try to perfect their performance. So I feel like we're the team leadership that is responsible now for our rock star city manager and the city management team. And so I want to model that behavior and say things from the dais about get to yes, problem solvers, innovative, customer centric. And as I'm emulating, as Commissioner McLeod and Commissioner McCarley and all the commissioners are emulating the kind of culture we want, then I'm hopeful that then Sean goes back to his team and he's the cheerleader and he's saying, thank you for making that innovative suggestion, and not just being a regulator and not just holding that over the head, or, feeling the pain of our citizens. And we have got to yes on that. And wow, today, some of our most challenging projects, the ones that fall out of the 98%, guess what? They become some of the most award-winning innovations because we stuck to it and we worked with it. And I'm using as an example today of Nicole Travis because Sean pointed her out and was able to give her the credit that I think we're all looking for Sean to now that we're not in COVID and it's not just his first 9 months and not everyone's ill and we've all been just emergency triaging. Now he can go more into setting the tone with the culture and be more visionary with all the employees, making sure we have all the people in the right place on the bus and that everyone's best skills are utilized and that everyone becomes a rock star in their place, or they find maybe another place that they're more suitable with their gifts and talents. And because Sean shines, in my opinion, and I told this to Larry Ross, when the people he leads shine. When I see vibrancy and excellence in the gifts throughout the city, I know that's good leadership. They feel valued. They feel encouraged. They feel celebrated. Their ideas matter. They're not just following orders. They're not just getting crucified after the meeting because, the city commission was complaining about them. They're being encouraged or they're sent to a training to get a best practice or looking to other cities to come back with ideas. So I feel like, going to Carmel, I'm happy to hear my colleagues mentioning that because that was one of the biggest things I said, before is I knew your your mid-year review was kind of like, okay, this is my leverage. Why don't you go to this conference? And I could tell how excited you were after that. And then you were able to go to LEDC and to our external stakeholders and to vision with them. And so I love that you are looking to the commission to be more effective and to be able to let us be heard. And I've seen that. I've seen a difference in staff on how they regard our questioning and how they regard our suggestions. They're more open. And I feel like they are not as much obstructionists, but more like, let's see how we can facilitate that. But the bottom line is it's you at the helm of these 2,700 employees every day. And it's you that has to become the best cheerleader and the biggest visionary leader in the Walt Disney here to get the innovation district going and to get our city to be walkable and vibrant and to go to Winter Haven and be jealous enough to come back and hang strings of lights in our downtown. It's really going to take you, modeling that throughout every department and all the organizations. And I feel like from what I've seen, you have that capacity. And it can even be better because now you're stepping into the number one seat, whereas before you would defer to the number one and you would do what others had asked you to do. Now we need you to attend leadership conferences or read best leadership books or to find out what all the other leaders of big corporations and big people that do big things, what are they having to say? And so that's kind of my what to do is to continue the Carmel visit, continue to read books, and maybe it's up to my colleagues and I just suggest the books, that we feel have been beneficial or, ones that we know, have excited and elicited that kind of teamwork and celebration among the whole community and culture of the city. But we win awards. That growth is a big, it's a big obstacle in our path. But we are gonna leap over that obstacle like a champion, and we are gonna do it because we have the best staff in the world. And so that's kind of why I'm a little bit more effusive, just because I feel like it's more of catching that spirit. And you did it in the meeting today when you talked about Nicole. And so I want to say that is what I want to see more of. Nicole was able to go through our process in community development as a CRA and go, wow, this is tough. This does delay things. This is hard. And she was able to use what she saw and then go and kind of have real life examples and practice that out and make us better in community development. What else could you be looking for like that? Like people who learn things or have strengths because they have learned it and they come over in this other seat and they're able to make some changes that just make a world of difference. And then now I want to see Nicole, who knows what she could do next now that she's even got a different position. Who knows what Emily can do with this innovation position. And like, it's just like your children, you want them to go beyond you and to because of your great leadership, equips and challenges and celebrates and cheerleads their team so they are the absolute best that they can be. So I don't know if that made any sense in the world, but I felt like I wanted to just use these few moments, kind of model. Now that you've proven that you are a workhorse, that you can get the job done, you will get the job done, you are working behind the scenes. Now I hope that you are able to do more of that leadership, which is casting vision, to the whole team.
I think you did that very enthusiastically. Are there other comments that somebody'd like to make? And I want us to be cognizant of giving our city attorney time is 12:35 and kind of splitting this a little bit. Are there any other Sean comments you'd like to make? And by the way, when you order a latte, you order a caramel latte, not a caramel latte. And so that's going to be what I want you to remember about Indiana. It's a caramel latte. Okay.
That was intentional to see if I was going to be corrected.
Okay. Any other comments? And Larry, anything you'd like to do to wrap up, or Sean that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd like to toss it to Sean to respond to the feedback he's gotten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Dr. Ross. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Thank you. I very much appreciate the feedback, and I can tell you from an introspective look at myself, your comments are absolutely spot on, and I realize it. Commissioner McCarley made a comment about some recent conversations that we have had that have been, in my opinion, extremely beneficial. And, I have committed from the communication standpoint that I will not stop, continuing to satisfy the commission in the way that you want me to communicate until I have, been successful. You're absolutely right. And so, I have been, for my entire career, I've been an operations guy. And so when I worked for Bobby Green and when I worked for Tony Delgado, I was the guy behind the scenes getting it done. And when Brad and I were teammates here, we were handling operations on a daily basis and giving Tony, that ability to be the communicator with the commission and with the public. And so I feel like we're transitioning to that. Now that I've got, Nicole and Emily, and they are tremendous, and they will certainly have an opportunity, to be out front as well, and to be the face, and the communicators with the commission and the public. But it's been a wild ride this year, just getting our team in place with all the COVID, situations. And quite frankly, what I have figured out recently is that I was trying to communicate with the full commission in just one message all the time. And what I have found is working better are those individual communications with each one of you individually. And there's nuances to that and the way that each of you want to be communicated with. And I feel like I'm getting closer to figuring out how to do that better. And so I think there has been a little improvement, at least I feel there has been since the 6-month review, and that will And so Nicole, to her credit, and the way that Nicole is, she went and bought the book, and she has now read it. And so we've had conversations with Emily. I've asked Nicole and Emily some things that they want to do. What are assignments that I haven't given them that they want? And Emily has talked about, maybe using books with our department heads where, we read some chapters, and then on our department head, meetings, Emily will have an opportunity, to lead some of those discussions. So a lot of the things that I heard in Commissioner Madden's comments, we are applying. We're just kind of in the beginning of that. We are getting our feet up under us. I'm hopeful that COVID is soon behind us. I can't wait to be able to meet with our city staff, who are the best of the best. But, for over a year now, we've not been able to have the VIP awards luncheons. We've not been able to have the service awards. We've not been able to have, the annual employee appreciation gatherings that we have in the past. And I very much look forward to that. And we have plans for that just as soon as we can all be together again, which hopefully is very soon. So no question, to Commissioner Madden's point, I think that the best leadership trait that I could give to this organization is by helping others develop professionally, and I certainly want to do that and will moving forward. I'm excited about the Office of Innovation and Strategy, which Emily is managing. I think that will, to Commissioner McLeod's comments about creativity and Commissioner Madden's comments about innovation, we're just getting that started, and I hope when we have this conversation this time next year, we will see the fruits of that labor. So I will not take up any more time. We still have Palmer to go. I promise you that your comments and direction to me is not taken lightly, and I will continue to my very best to improve on all of the areas for improvement that I've heard. I do appreciate the scoring, but more importantly for me are those comments. It helps me understand individually what you're seeking, and I will take it to heart, and you will see changes in those areas. And so I thank you all for the time, and Dr. Ross for your assistance throughout this process, and I look forward to the next year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move, Dr. Ross, to Mr. Davis.
Very good. This is Palmer Davis's second formal written review. So we do have some longitudinal comparisons. All 7 performance dimensions scored slightly above meets or slightly above expectations, ranging from a 4.2 to a 4.68. His highest scoring dimension was problem solving and decision making with a 4.68. The 6 of those 7 scores were also up from the prior annual performance review. So again, progress in objective scoring. The highest scoring dimension was interaction with the city manager. So again, a nice thing with the new city manager in place that team is meshing. One of the year's prior lowest scoring areas, professional relationships, showed the highest increase year over year with a 12% increase. And I think from the comments that are captured and shared, the biggest challenge for the reviewers, the commissioners, was not knowing enough about that professional network and still learning about that. The 6 of the 7 individual reviewers scored Palmer above a 4.18, again, meets to somewhat exceeds expectations. There was one reviewer at 3.98, suggesting that his performance met that reviewer's expectations. All of the overall scores of the returning 6 commissioners, one of the commissioners was new, showed an increase from the prior year. So again, steady progress over the past year in terms of performance. There were the 49 individual scores. Literally half of them were 4.5 or 5.0. So somewhat exceeds to exceeds expectations. There was one score of 3.5 and one score of 3.0, indicating above average to average performance. And there were 3 scores of NA, probably the most we've ever had in one review, suggesting that the reviewers really weren't comfortable giving a score in the absence of more experience or more information. So that's a positive sign, again, that the individual reviewers, each of you as commissioners, takes the process seriously. It's not just a check the box, complete the task, but you're actually moving forward. Of the 65 subjective comments, about 70% of them were affirmative, positive, complimentary. 18 of the comments were suggestions for, again, more or changed behavior. And there were only 2 comments for something done differently, one each in the communications area and in the management of the department area. Overall, Palmer's score was a 4.36, again, up from the prior year and indicating overall performance clearly met and somewhat exceeded expectations of the collective body.
I'll start out since I had the lowest. I think we need to take a look at your whole department, and my concern is that and of course, we're all limited in our exposure to this on a daily basis, so I'm making a presumption in much of this from what I see. But your need to manage your people is going to be one of the things you've got to start to grow in your broader skill sets as head of that department. And so what do I mean in that? I mean, I think you should become overt in maybe taking a look at analyzing your staff. Are they paid well? Are the positions right? Are the titles right? Should we do a study that compares some of those positions? And I'd love to see you have that leadership in application that makes your department go, wow, he's really taking a look and assessing us in terms of what we need to do. Do you need another attorney in that department? Do you need 4 of you as you look at outside services? Or are we really at the sweet spot, which I trust dramatically? And I believe we should always have outside sources. Outside sources give us third-party experience. They give us very specific industry experience in some nuanced areas that we don't necessarily do day in and day out. So I'm not advocating that a 4th person gets hired because we just want to do more workload and less outside legal fees. We might make a big mistake not using somebody who has an expertise in a labor area or something like that. But you've got to have some time too to do your people in your department. And some of the non-legal, so your sweet spot is performing and doing legal work. You're going to need to build in, I don't know what the percentage is, 10% of your time, 5% of your time maybe. That becomes more managerial, more supervision of what's happening. My sense is that as long as everybody's producing, you're content. And what I really want you to think about is how can you do more of the lift that Stephanie was talking about a little bit to some degree in your own department. And so that's an encouragement. So I scored it low so that I could watch it rise going up, not because of something punitive at all in that regard. I think you probably are running average at that, and it's probably not been an emphasis point in your life. And I may be wrong on all this. So I'd really be interested in hearing if you think that I'm missing a little bit of what you have been doing. But I'm just trying to make sure you're really, I don't know that we did that well with Tim. I don't know when the last time it was done. I just want to make sure we're paying people at the right levels. There's the right differentiations. If there's a senior person and this is more of a junior person, is there a differentiation in their pay? Those kinds of things, and that you have solace with that. And we see the benefits that come from it in a more satisfied department as a result.
Do you want a response right now or? I mean, I think you've zeroed in on what I would assess as my own weakness. I don't think I've really, that's probably my area of least experience, and I definitely tend to keep my head down, and I'm in the weeds, and probably have neglected that more than I should. So I think you zeroed in on what I need to work on the most. That's the way I would assess myself.
Mr. Madden, you.
Thank you. I'll go next just because it's interesting to hear that perspective, Mayor, and it's absolutely valid. It was interesting. I looked at the question. I think I rated lower last year in that particular management because I didn't know what I didn't know. I couldn't see behind the scenes. And I feel like this year, I mean, his hire in Jared, I mean, I thought, wow, hiring's tough. And I've made some bad hires. And I mean, it's just, to make a good hire is a huge skill. And I've seen, whether it was starting out when I was on the CRA, Jared interworking, when he first stepped up to do his job and just how he thought and how he kind of came alive and did his job, I thought was a credit to Palmer's skill in hiring. And then also his skill in just delegating to his team when Jared was able to look through that fire code, just because we said, what's the difference here? It was going to either be a rubber stamp or we were going to find out where we were more strict than the state. And that was Palmer who heard us and delegated that. And then Jared did the research and came back to us with a suggestion. And that was like barely, I mean, it wasn't like we all had a workshop on it and put together a plan for Palmer to go do that. It just, he heard us, he executed behind the scenes, he delegated it, and Jared came back, and I was very impressed. I was very impressed, obviously, with Ramona and the rice. And I mean, that's a huge consequential, thing. And, to me, like I said to Sean, what I'm hoping to see in all the city staff is when I'm judging the leadership quality, of a manager. To me, it's in the vibrancy of those who serve alongside or underneath that management. And I see such vibrancy in Ramona and in Jared. It looks like they enjoy their job. I mean, maybe they're just putting on a good show, but they look like they enjoy their job, like they are achieving and stretched and probably challenged. He probably asked them to do things that, that they are equal to the task. And so I felt like I had seen real growth from what I judged him last year, this year by that hire and how I've seen Jared. So, but what the mayor said is absolutely true. It's a whole nother part of the job. It just wasn't in my mindset as how I was approaching the question. Mine was more, are those folks in his department, do they look vibrant? Do they look excellent? Are they working together as a team? Do they look like they enjoy their job? Does that make sense, Mayor? Like just as a little different nuance for that question. And then the second thing that I just wanted to bring up was, like I said, for Sean, he's just in a year, whereas now I've had a year to kind of look more into Palmer's side. Of course, my marks went higher because what I've really valued, Palmer, is that I feel like, and maybe it's just because I know more of the job, but like from a cell tower to Mark McDonald wanting to build on his property on the lake, to the Carillon Lakes, situation. I feel like you give us our legal parameters in which we can work, especially when we're going into a quasi-judicial role. And you tell us, remember, this is a quasi-judicial role. Everything has to be in the meeting and recorded to be able to, if they come back and sue us. I have never felt like you're like, you better not do this because they'll sue us, or this is really what you should do, and honestly.
Sorry, Polly, you're busy. Get ready.
Here we go. Yep.
Great. If I can just grab that.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Oh, we're just getting out of the way.
That if we voted on safety, that, you know, we would be sued for, you know, saying no to a cell tower because of RF. Or he didn't tell us, you know, about the property rights issue at the state level is different even from our land code of adding a little extra layer on our lakes. I mean, so I feel like the way you approach it, it's never biased. I don't even really have any idea how you would vote or what you would think if it was your decision. And that is really amazing. I mean, I feel like you give us the legal parameters, you give us your best advice, and then you let us make our decision. And I mean, I don't know what else we could ask for in that regard. And so that, I think, that's your superpower, and I'm very grateful for it. And I think you've also, like I said, that LRH contract, the broadband contract, the water contract, and then getting Ramona to do the rice and Jared to do the CRA and the fire code and the other things that they work on. I feel, you know, really blessed to be in such good hands.
Excellent. Other comments that will be helpful to our wonderful city attorney, Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just concur with what you said and Commissioner Madden. I would agree on the review of the legal department and structured correctly. Do we have the right positions? I'm a fan of that throughout the city. And just thinking of, you know, Palmer, you were under Tim, and Sean under Tony, and now these are your departments. This is your operation to run and to put your stamp on. And so there's that opportunity. You've had time to be in the spot to see, do we need to make changes to be best positioned going into 2022 and beyond? And I have confidence in you to do that. I 100% agree with Commissioner Madden about your legal counsel, and without a doubt, the details of legal ramifications and walking us through different scenarios in the one-on-one meetings, as well as a group, I have found you to be very valuable as a policy advisor in the context of legal counsel. And so you're not telling us, as Commissioner Madden said, which way we should vote, but you walking us through the different implications of our policy decisions. And to me, as a policymaker, that's invaluable. And so I would encourage you to lean into that even more. Just it helps my thought process to be able to hear you, explain, if the commission goes this way, here's what that means, or here's what other communities have done, here's what we see in different precedents and so on. And so I think it's, this past year you have handled a number of negotiations and very complex issues. And your team, I agree with the comments about Ramona and Jared. I initially, when I was talking to Dr. Ross, I said, I don't know a lot about the management of staff and departments. And he said, well, what do you see from those who are under him and the way they interact with you all and the way they present? And so that was kind of a light bulb to say, yeah, they do seem to really enjoy their work. They're passionate about it. The way Jared has just really poured himself into issues that maybe he didn't know as much about initially and became an expert on and has been successful. The same with Ramona, as always. So well done. I would just say, just continue to do what you've been doing, and then just agreeing with the mayor's recommendation on analysis of the department.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm gonna make sure you give me the go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I've always said, and for the years I've been here, to say to both Palmer and his, of course, been the president, when they followed behind Tim and worked with Tim, of course, very closely as he did, I thank you all for having our back. I've said it before and will continue to say it. It seems very well, both of you were very, very well knowledgeable when it comes to the law and making sure that we understood where our parameters as far as elected officials are concerned and the things that we need to know. And I would agree with the comments made. You give it to us, but you allow us, because we're the ones got to make the decision how to vote and that kind of thing. I certainly appreciate that, and we continue to appreciate that from you, Mr. Davis. Certainly, I have shared over the years, even before you came along, of course, your predecessor, when it preceded you, I always thought, how can we not spend as much money as we do with outside legal counsel, or maybe have someone else in the department that would maybe be able to take on some of those particular subject matters that would keep the cost down. But I learned from your predecessor, and even in some respect from you, that maybe it would be a little more costly, to bring on another staff person. But is that the case? I still ask that question, as I have done in the past years. So, but other than that, I would say my only concern, and not so much a concern, but I think that I'd like to see more of you, the wealth of knowledge that you have, be presented to others. And that comes from professional relationships, getting yourself involved maybe with some organizations or other networking opportunities where you can share that knowledge that you do have, which is very evident, and give it and share it with others among your professional associations, some state associations as such. But that's the only thing I would say maybe I would ask you to do, because you have a wealth of knowledge and you do a job very in depth. And I thank you for that again.
Other comments? Anybody else? Palmer, anything you'd like to share overall?
I'll be brief since we're about to hit the legislative committee, but I appreciate the comments. I think, Mayor, you zeroed in on my need to think more strategically about my office. As far as getting involved in policy, that's very intentional to recognize that you guys are the policymakers, and I just simply need to give you the background and let you guys make the policy decisions. That's important, very important to me. So again, I appreciate y'all's comments, and I'll leave it at that since we're running short on time.
Hey, Larry, anything else from you?
Yeah, just a last, I usually follow up with recommendations very briefly. I've seen the value, as many of you have, of the mid-year, it was referenced a number of times today, the mid-year informal review. I think that serves a very useful purpose, and you should continue that. Based on some conversations with both Palmer and Sean and my own plans, this will probably be the last year that I facilitate this, but I think you should take advantage of this next 6 months to a year to seek a new third-party outside facilitator and engage in a continuous improvement process to reevaluate the performance dimensions and tweak the process in ways that might make it better, and do all of that with a look to the future for improving what is already literally a best in industry practice. So thank you for the opportunity over all these years, and thank you for your sincere commitment to the process and the value it adds.
Well, and thank you for your professionalism and continuity over the years of making it happen. We understand. We'll miss you. If you have some reservation or relapse that you want to respond to, let us know. But we'll otherwise take your advice in the process of that. And don't forget to tell your brother happy birthday.
Yes, thank you for the reminder.
All right. Anything else, friends?
I hate to bring it up, but under the charter, the city commission establishes the compensation of the city manager and the city attorney. So that doesn't just happen automatically. That has to be established by the city commission. You can't do that now because we're just in workshop format, but at some point you will need to establish those salaries per the charter.
All right. Very good. We will move forward and take that advice, sir. Let's meet in the commission conference room for our legislative session. Thanks.